Welcome back to the Stretch the Floor podcast. I'm Matt, and I'm here with Venush on the first Tuesday of the NBA offseason. The draft is actually coming up pretty soon, in like a month or
Yeah,
5 weeks from now. So we're going to
yeah,
start covering that soon. But I think this episode, it's a good time to, because the season just ended, and like we kind of talked about last week, a lot of players kind of changed their stock in the league. I think it's as good a time as any to do our first top 10 list of the offseason. Kind of look at where the league stands right now. Top 10 best players in the league. Who doesn't love a good top 10 list? Um, I think, or actually, before we get into that, there actually is some news to talk about first. A couple of coach hirings and even like a stepping down. First, Ty Lue uh,
yeah,
got the job that we all said that he should get. What are your thoughts?
yeah. Ty Lue, we don't know how much he's grown as a coach under this assistant role, but that team's gonna need changes. Ty Lue wants a point guard probably in. Kawhi's rumored to also wanting a point guard in, so we're probably gonna see a point guard of decent like stature in the league going to the Clippers somehow. I don't know how. So it just means that the team's gonna be more oriented on a starting five than a bench, knowing Ty Lue and like his past work.
Yeah, and I think all that stuff came out last week about how like some players kind of resented Kawhi's load management, and then some of the players came out and said that it wasn't true. Um,
Yeah,
I don't know if Ty Lue's going to give him that kind of treatment. Um,
he is.
I mean, anyone who coaches Kawhi is going to give him that treatment, but like I don't
Especially
know
on
if
his
it's
last year on his deal. You tell him
true.
not to do this, not to do that. He says,
Honestly,
"All right,
it might be
I'll
even worse than it was last year.
yeah."
Yeah,
He's gonna be like, "All right, I'll just go play with the Lakers. They'll still offer me a max."
yeah,
And then the league's kind of ruined.
yeah.
Yeah. So
But
nothing's gonna change with the Kawhi situation. It's never gonna change.
yeah, uh, I agree. But that's the hire that we all said uh, would be the smart move for them, and also Ty Lue deserved obviously another shot at coaching in the league.
Yeah.
Another hire that actually just happened a few hours ago is kind of came out of nowhere. Raptors assistant Nate Bjorkgren, uh, replacing Nate McMillan in Indiana.
Yeah. It's people always say they want to see new faces in coaching hires and they want to not just rotate the same guys in and out. And I think this is a good hire. Like obviously the Raptors have had the best coaching system in the last two years in the NBA. I think anyone would agree with that. First
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago they won a championship. This last year they won the Coach of the Year award. So yeah, it kind of makes sense. Just wasn't rumored a lot, but you're not gonna get.
Yeah, no, I didn't hear about that at all.
Mhm.
I don't think I even heard his name come up once. Maybe I might remember hearing it once for an interview or something, but
Yeah,
not really. But the Nick Nurse coaching tree has already started 2 years into his tenure as a head coach.
yeah,
Um, it's probably only going to go from there. And
yeah.
other than that, the only thing is Daryl Morey, surprisingly stepping down as the GM president or whatever he was of Houston. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't think they need a replacement yet either.
No, they have. I think people in the organization are just stepping up. I don't think they're gonna hire anyone specifically. But this basically means micro ball is officially over.
Yeah.
They are gonna get a center with Daryl Morey
Mm-hmm.
and the coach that started it all out. They're probably gonna get a center. It's probably gonna be for Eric Gordon because that's how the salaries are gonna work. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see which center they get. And I kind of want to see this Rockets team. I think everyone is underestimating how good they are.
I think so too. Well, I mean, anytime you have James Harden, you're pretty much guaranteed to be in the
A
second
playoff
round of the
spot.
playoffs.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I definitely want to see where, because we've seen for the last few years them just going heavier and heavier on the Murray ball, the small ball, the three ball. I want to see if they go in a different direction and maybe play less of a predictable, like statistic analytic based offense. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
So okay, I think we can get into the top 10 now.
Just jump
Um,
straight into it. Yeah.
yeah, let's get into it. I think that there's a clear top seven, and then there's kind of like a cutoff between.
Really?
There's kind of
I
like a
think,
tier one and a tier two. I think
yeah.
so.
I think there's a clear top seven, but I think eight, nine are also clear as well. And I think the only debatable question is 10.
Really?
Yeah, I think like 8 and 9, like they're not as good as the top seven, but they're solidified.
Okay, well, you go first. Let's hear. Let's go. Give me your bottom three.
Okay, so at 8 I have Dame Lillard. At 9 I have Luka Doncic, and at 10 I have Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, I got Dame at 8, and then I got Butler at 9 and Luca at 10.
Ooh, okay, okay.
So I'm glad we agree on Dame because
Yeah,
I kind of thought that you were gonna. I had a feeling you were gonna have Butler ahead of him at 8.
no, no,
Um,
no.
and even though we just saw Jimmy put on one of the best or one of the most memorable finals performances from like a non superstar,
Hmm.
um, we can't forget what Dame was doing in the whole season and in the NBA restart. I mean, this guy averaged uh 37.6 points a game in the seeding games and averaged 34 and 8 for the regular season. Led Portland to the playoffs when the restart happened when they were a few games back. I forget exactly how many games back, but yeah, I think he has to be in the clear number
Yeah,
8.
and I'm surprised you have Luka Doncic so low, because you have to remember Luka pushed that Spurs team, I mean that Mavericks team to a competitive series against the Clippers, and he lost the second best player, Kristaps Porzingis, in half that series, and to close out that series,
Mm-hmm.
they lost the starter midway through the series, not midway through the series, midway through the season. Uh, so like they just like the only starters that consistently played with Luka Doncic were like out and injured. So people were just stepping up, and this roster was basically just their bench players and Luka Doncic kind of. So for him to make a competitive series with the favorites to win the championship, like that's incredible. And I don't even need to talk about stats because Luka Doncic's stats are obviously better than Jimmy Butler's.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah, but I understand if you put like defense and if you just weigh defense a lot more to put
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy over Luka, because Luka is obviously not the greatest defender. But you really can't say he's a bad defender too, because on those switches and stuff, people weren't really attacking Luka Doncic. They're kind of just attacking him to try to get him into foul trouble, but they weren't really like dominating him as like a bad defender, like a Steph Curry would kind of get sought out for and dominated. So
Or
man,
like
I don't know.
Jokic.
Yeah, Luka Doncic, he's the face of this league. He sells the most jerseys beside LeBron James. It is Giannis is definitely higher on this list for me and you, but it is Luka Doncic's league. He's a funner player to watch. We could do the stuff he could do, you know. We can't do
Mm.
dunks from the free throw line, which Giannis does, but we could try a step back three, or we could try a floater, and that's why he will be much more interesting and people will buy his jerseys. You
Yep,
have one of his jerseys. Like
I do.
he's yeah, he's the face of this league. Like, and it's clear. Like next season or the season after that, he could be top three, top 4.
Yeah, so I have him at 10.
Hmm.
It's honestly, you said there was a clear gap between 8, 9, and then 10. I think it was actually kind of hard for me to figure out the order there. Uh, I only, it just we just saw Jimmy Butler literally lead a team to a finals
Yeah,
and to a 6 game series in the NBA finals. For me, and he averaged 26, 8, and 10 in that finals and gave us a 40-point triple double or multiple 30-point triple doubles in the NBA finals. I think that kind of just has to automatically put him at number 9 ahead of Luka Doncic, especially when you consider the defense.
yeah,
Um, but what we saw in the playoffs this year from Luka is what we're going to see for the next like 10, 12 years,
yeah,
hopefully, from him. He
yeah.
should be the MVP favorite going to next year, like we've said before. So
Hmm.
he definitely could be top 5, like you said, very, very, very soon. I think Jimmy
Yeah,
has just I think he's just earned this. As soon as next season starts, he might fall out of the top 10. I think right now though,
yeah.
I
He
think he's
will.
just earned this status.
Like if we make this list again in the like All-Star break or whatever,
Yeah,
like you're 100% gonna have Luka Doncic
I
over
think
Jimmy
so. Yeah,
Butler.
yeah,
Like it's not even gonna be a question.
yeah.
And I just Jimmy got a lot of praising for this, and that's why he has to be on this top 10 list. I just couldn't put over someone who did it for a whole season. Like at the end of the day, Jimmy Butler averaged 20 points for the season. Like he wasn't averaging a near triple double with 9 rebounds, 9 assists, and what 28 points. It was crazy. This is a historic season, and due to due to another player that's also on this list, James Harden, those stats that we're seeing, these historic stats, are kind of being
Mm,
like pushed over. But man, not a lot of people did what Luka
that's a good point.
Doncic did. And someone that we both don't have on this list 100%, Trey Young, he also had a crazy statistical season, which, man, in
Yeah,
like 5, 6 years ago, that season alone would have made him a top 10 player.
you're right. Like these stats were kind of James Harden, like you said, mainly him.
Yeah,
These are just kind of getting watered down for us, and like we definitely do not appreciate them as much as we should. It's hard to average 28 points a game, and
yeah.
like how many people in the world have in history have ever averaged 28
And
points a game? It's not a lot.
9 assists. Like
Yeah,
it's like they're
insane.
playmaking and scoring a lot. Like point guards never really had this much either playmaking, like scorers never had this much playmaking. We never seen LeBron. We've seen LeBron, but we never seen Michael
Hmm.
Jordan or a Kobe Bryant ever average this much assists. And we've
Yeah,
never seen a Magic Johnson or a John Stockton ever score this much.
yeah.
So yeah, these guys, they're doing a lot. They're doing a lot for their teams.
Who was the last? Who's the last player to be a consensus top 10 player after their second year in the league?
Probably like people might say LeBron, but I'm not I think probably LeBron. He'd probably be like
Probably
10th.
LeBron, right?
Yeah.
It's been
S-
17,
17 years.
17, 18 years,
Yeah.
16, 17 years. That's how historic the numbers are, and not just the numbers, obviously the production. Because I mean, I think this is going back a couple of months now, but we both predicted the Mavs to get swept by the Clippers in the
Yeah.
first round. Now maybe some of that's on the Clippers because they ended up being frauds, but
Yeah.
they pushed them to six, very
Mhm.
competitive series, and
Yeah.
it was down the stretch, clutch time Luka every single time, and we like those are going to be on his highlight reel pretty much probably for his whole career. Some of those shots he made.
Yeah, and people, this Mavericks team might also be a dynasty because with that incredible free agency class coming soon, Luka Doncic is still on his rookie deal, so you could get another max player, and then you can max out Luka Doncic later, and you know Mark Cuban always loves playing that extra tax. He doesn't care about it. He'll pay that tax.
Yeah.
So like we can honestly see a huge big three with the Mavericks and them being a dominant team similar to I like to call them the updated version of Kobe and Shaq
Mm.
because they both could shoot so well and they don't touch the paint at all. So yeah, they could be the updated version of Kobe and Shaq with another superstar, which would be insane.
That'd be insane. So before we go on to the next tier, Jokic is a guy who I just kind of missed the cut for me. I think for
Yeah,
you too. I don't think he's higher than these guys for you.
he was 11 for me.
Yeah,
He was
I
11.
agree. I think I would have had Jason Tatum probably after that at 12. I don't know. Um, but I just
Yeah,
Jokic, Jokic, I think was ahead of Butler for both of us coming in. I think we
mhm,
both had him in the top 10, but
yeah,
I think his I'm not gonna say he got exposed because he overall had a really good series in the conference finals against the Lakers, but
yeah,
his defense kind of lost him that series. His defense in foul trouble and his struggles on the glass on the defensive end,
yeah.
I think was one of the main reasons they lost that series. So I that's why he kind of falls out of the top 10 for me, even though I think he's pretty much a near perfect offensive player.
Yeah, and I don't want to blame it on him, just him too, because the point guard like penetration of the Denver Nuggets wasn't that good too. Like people were just driving into Jokic, which I
Yeah,
think they'll
that's
address
fair.
either in this offseason or the next offseason. And we have another non-great defender on here, and I think when you have a great player who could potentially be in a top 10 list just off his offensive merits,
Mm-hmm.
you have to build a team around him that guards and plays defense. And the player I'm talking about is Steph Curry. We both definitely have him in this top 10 list.
James
And
Harden.
I'm saying like a championship player.
Okay.
That's what I mean.
Okay.
Like they built a team to win championships around Curry that could play defense.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to build a team around Jokic that wins championships, you need a team. You just need defenders. That's what you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thing is, I think it's a little harder to hide a guy like Jokic because he plays such an important. I mean, obviously every position's important, but I mean, you only have one center, you only have one 7-footer on the floor usually,
Hmm.
and it's kind of like every pick and roll they can kind of attack him, and it's you can't
Yeah,
really hide him on a smaller guy. It's but you definitely can. There have been teams that have won with centers who aren't great defenders. So,
yeah, yeah. You also have to have like good backup defenders when you have a Jokic type player.
mm,
Just because if he gets in foul trouble, you can't have Mason Plumlee coming in and giving you like negative 30 minutes.
yeah, yeah,
Like you need a solid backup, which I think they can address. This offseason is going to be a huge offseason
I think so
that
too.
could
Yeah,
push them into contenders.
yeah. So I think we can move on now. And before we get into that, um, for the purpose of this list, we kind of assume that Steph Curry and Kevin Durant were going to be as we last saw them because we don't know, we can't really
Yeah,
predict the future, and it wouldn't really be fair to like kind of punish these guys for having not played this year.
yeah.
Um, so we're just going to assume that they are who we last saw them as. So give me your. What do you want to go 7-6-5?
6. Yeah. Okay, so mine's pretty, I would say mine's
I think
pretty
we're going to agree for the
controversial.
rest of this list.
After 765, I think so too. But at 7, I have James Harden. At 6, I have Anthony Davis. And at 5, I have Giannis.
Whoa, what?
Yeah.
Giannis at 5. Okay, okay. Well, I have Davis and Harden at 7-6, so flipped from yours, and then I have
Oh,
Curry at 5.
ooh. Okay. That's very surprising.
Okay, so first,
We'll talk
Anthony
about,
Davis
yeah.
is could be a top 3 player in the league just based on his talent.
Hmm.
Um, he just averaged a 28 and 10 in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Could have won Finals MVP for his defense. Is probably the best defender in the league, even though Giannis won
Yeah.
Defensive Player of the Year. But I want to see him do something as the best player on the team. James Harden is always in the second round of the playoffs or the conference finals as the best player. And I know he was only 24 when he was last in the playoffs as the best
Yeah.
player on the team. But he has never led a team past the second round. So I want to see what he does as the best player. I can't put you ahead of a guy like James Harden or Steph Curry or anything like that if you haven't been the best player in a team, on a good
Yeah, but
team.
you say that, but James Harden has had a Dwight Howard on his team, a much better Dwight Howard. He's had a near prime Chris Paul on his team, and then he's had a Russell Westbrook on his team. Anthony Davis has had Drew Holiday on his team.
Charlotte's pretty good.
Drew Holiday and Chris Paul, are they comparable? Not even close. They're not even like when we're talking about a guaranteed Hall of Famer who's probably a top 10 point guard of all time versus Drew
Yeah.
Holiday, like a good player, but not comparable. Like even Russell Westbrook, on as much hate as he gets, he's still a Hall of Famer, a guaranteed first ballot Hall of
Yeah.
Famer.
Guaranteed.
And then we're talking about like he's never had a good second player to like do anything with, and he still made it to the second round. So it's not like he hasn't had any success without LeBron. He still made it to the second round.
I'm not saying he can't. I'm not
And
saying he. I'm just saying he hasn't yet. And I feel like it's. I don't think it's fair to a guy like James Harden to not to have a guy who's never led a team anywhere over him. When
but you don't he hasn't won a championship. Like
I
I
know.
don't know how he could, and you have Giannis over him. And Giannis hasn't done anything as well.
Well, Giannis led
So
a
what's
team
this
to the
argument?
conference finals last year,
So
at least
for the difference of one
one
round,
round.
for me is one position, 5 and 6. For you, Giannis is in your top four, but Anthony Davis is 7. So the difference is 3 based off one round. One round difference
There's
is
okay. So should we get into Giannis now, or
Giannis. Hopefully, your Giannis is your fourth spot.
no? He's not.
Okay, so it's more than a 4 space difference, and Anthony Davis and Giannis have literally the difference of success is one playoff series, and you have him that much higher. They're such similar players. Obviously, with Giannis having the better handle, defensively they're both the best in the league. Like they're one,
Yeah.
two,
Yeah.
like
1A, 1B, whatever.
no one is comparable to
No.
them. Like even Rudy Gobert, like it's such a big gap.
Yeah.
And then this guy has a championship as the second option, as a 1B option, not really a 2 option. And Giannis has nothing. Like he didn't even have a good conference finals showing where you could be like Jason Tatum had a good conference final showing where you're like, oh man, he tried really hard, but Kemba Walker let him down. No, Giannis kind of choked in the conference finals. When that wall was built against him, he couldn't do anything. Marcus Gasol and Kawhi shut him out, and they won 4 straight. Like if we're talking about 2 game difference, like he's
Hmm.
only won 2 games in the conference finals,
Yeah.
and you have that a +4 difference in
I don't.
rating.
That's not the only factor. I think Giannis is out of all these players is I think not by far, but he's clearly the best regular season player. That's why he has two straight MVPs. Two straight MVPs is the best regular season player. Uh, I think that's pretty obvious.
James
And
Harden. If we're talking about just regular season, I might have to have James Harden number one.
count defense, and I don't think it's close.
Yeah, but 5 straight years in top three
Or like,
MVP
well, 2 straight years is the best record in the league. For the Bucks and two straight MVPs. But regular season, say what
doesn't
you want
matter.
about it.
Yeah,
He looks like the best player in the league 95% of the time, but like when he runs, like you said, when he runs into a team that like has the kind of personnel that can slow him down, build that wall, he doesn't really know what to do. He doesn't have counters for that. Like
yeah.
he doesn't shoot, obviously. Um, but I just don't think two straight back-to-back MVPs, the Defensive Player of the Year. I don't. I I think it's really really disrespectful to have him under some of the guys that you have him under right now. Like he's
Ev-
clearly the best. Like it's his league right now, like you said.
no,
I,
I
I
can't.
don't. You literally.
Everyone, everyone I have before him has a Finals MVP, and have as a Finals MVP. Okay, besides Curry, but Curry should have a Finals MVP. Like they've all been the best player on a championship team. They've all proven that you could build a team around them and win a championship. And I think out of those players that don't have Finals MVPs, Giannis is the best. That's why he's number 5 on my list. He's above Anthony Davis. He's above James Harden. But the guys in front of him have been the best player on a championship team. And at the end of the day, even though I don't like it because it causes super teams to form, championships is what matters. Championships is going to determine your worth in this league. And until Giannis wins the championship, he can't move above those guys 1, 2, 3, 4, in my opinion.
Well, I
Even if he averages like 40, 20, and 20, like he's still
are
going to
we
be
talking
fifth.
about the most accomplished players in the league, or the right now who are the best players in the league?
Like
Because
right now, who are the best players? Because you can't take away from Curry just because he's been deferring to Kevin Durant for the last 2 years. And
no, I don't.
like
I don't think. No, no, no. I don't. I just think if you ask any GM right now, you want to.
for next season,
No, yeah, for next season, who do you want on your
oh,
team, Giannis or Steph Curry? I think
no
all of them.
chance.
I pick Giannis 100%.
No.
First of all, he's more durable. Um,
Okay, yeah. If you're counting durability, then yeah, Steph Curry's gonna go under.
you're going to win more regular season games with him as your best player. You're gonna have a higher seed. You just are. Um,
You say that, but Steph Curry led the best regular season team of all time, 73-9.
yeah, that was what, like 4 years ago.
But all
Um,
he had was defenders. Like all you need to do to win with Steph Curry is put defenders and Klay Thompson, and you you already have a championship
yeah,
contender.
and I say that ask the GM thing because I do blame the roster construction for some. Not obviously, I'm not going to say Giannis is without blame in the playoffs, but I mean it's so obvious that they needed a second playmaker or even like a primary playmaker like a Chris Paul in this team. I think
Mhm.
that's an automatic championship team, and I think the narrative and the view of Giannis around the league would be probably the consensus number one player in the league if he had a player like that because we
Yeah,
wouldn't see the him getting exposed at pretty much every playoff round.
yeah. Man, I just don't know because this current Bucks team, in my opinion, is comparable to the team that Curry won his first championship with Klay Thompson and Chris Middleton kind of being the same player back when Klay was in 2015. Draymond Green kind of being a similar player to Brook Lopez. Uh, Iguodala and Bledsoe kind of being obviously Iguodala a little bit better, but they're kind of comparable. And at the end of the day, Curry was able to win a championship with that roster, and
Yeah,
then
but
he
that's the thing.
won
That was in
2 more championships.
2015. That was in 2015.
Well, we can't talk about anything else because he had Kevin Durant with him, and they were just dominating the league. So I can't be like, look at this stat because you're just gonna be like, oh yeah, he was a second option with Kevin Durant, but they dominated the league till this year when they were hurt. Like they've only lost because they were hurt. Like they've never lost unless they were hurt. Like they just win
Yeah.
everything. So
That it's just
man,
it's hard because
he has to be top three.
I
It's
definitely can
disrespectful.
I definitely can see uh him being a top three player. Like he is definitely good enough talent wise and everything to be a top three player. It's just we have not seen him without
Kevin
four
Durant,
MVPs on his team, three MVPs on his team, or three
one
sorry
MVP.
three another MVP and 3 or 4 All Stars on his team. We literally have not seen that for like 4 years.
Yeah, the
So it's
last
kind
time.
of just hard to judge him, you know?
Yeah, the last time we saw it, he was unanimous MVP though. So like,
Okay,
how you could
again,
have him at
5 years ago.
fifth
We're
4 years
just gonna
ago?
disagree on this. I
Yeah, you're gonna change your opinion. I think. I think Curry, if he stays healthy, he's gonna be.
so
He has to be.
you're telling me right now that next season, assuming health and everything,
Mhm.
Curry's gonna be more successful than Giannis next season.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't think
First,
so.
first of all, Giannis is gonna be graded on such a harder scale because he won two MVPs, but he sucked. So he could literally be averaging 35, and I don't think he'll win MVP.
Oh, he's not winning MVP no matter what. Yeah, he could average 40. He's not winning MVP.
Yeah, but I think if Steph Curry gets the first seed, I think he's winning MVP.
Yeah, I agree.
So
But
like,
MVP doesn't. It's a so much of it is narrative. I don't really think it
yeah,
reflects.
but then we have to give Curry credit too because Dame has similar teams. Luka Doncic has similar teams where it's just like shooters and defenders, but Curry's always making them the best seed. Curry's always making them like win championships or make the finals or make the conference finals. And like, I don't know, man. Like people always talk a lot about Clay, but Clay really doesn't dribble. Like
He doesn't.
there's
40
a
points on 4 dribbles.
there's a comparison with Clay and Duncan Robinson. Obviously, I think Clay's much better.
I made that comparison earlier on the
Yeah, but
podcast.
the fact that there's comparisons like that, and he's the second best player, you have to put Steph Curry so much higher than these other guys. Like he was a unanimous MVP. I think people just forget that. Like I'm gonna rate him on his unanimous MVP season that he could bounce back to, because the other
Mhm.
4 years he was just doing what the team needs him to do to win,
Yeah.
and it's gonna be interesting. That's why a lot of people had him in fantasies drafted high last year because a lot of people believe that he could come back, but it's gonna be interesting. He
See,
definitely can make a push into top three. You have to admit, like he can push into the
oh,
top three.
100%. Like I I really want to see what that team looks like with him as the clear best player. It's just that he hasn't. We just haven't been able to judge him properly because he's
Yeah,
always had Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson on his team. It's hard. I don't know.
yeah. And before Kevin Durant joined, I think people forget that he was number two, like in the rankings. Like he had surpassed Kevin Durant because he just won a championship and led a 73-9 team.
Yeah.
He had surpassed Kevin Durant in like this ranking, and he was number two behind LeBron James. So like people really kind of forgot about Curry and how popular he was, how exciting his game was to watch. He was like the Dame stretch that Dame had after the All Star break.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that for a whole season, and
Yeah.
that's Steph
2 whole
Curry.
seasons.
Yeah,
Really. Um. Yeah. I really hope. Like I don't want to sound like I'm hating on him because I like if he actually does you know uh lead the team to a number 1 or number 2 seed next year and goes really far in the playoffs. Yeah, I'll put him over Giannis. I just think right now we've seen more recently from Giannis. Uh, back to back MVP. Like you're rating Curry based on his unanimous MVP. I'm rating Giannis based on his back to back MVPs.
hmm
Um, and his defense and everything like that.
yeah,
Okay, so hang on. So I had Harden 6, Curry 5, and Davis 7.
yeah. I had Harden 7,
Yeah.
Davis 6, Giannis 5.
Okay. So I guess we can go to the top 4 now.
Yeah, we're gonna group 4. It's Kawhi.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then number 3, I have Curry, and you have Giannis.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we could just talk about that because we already know who's one
Yeah.
and two. We're gonna talk about
Yeah.
them later.
Yeah.
How do you have Giannis above Kawhi? Like, I just want to see the explanation for
I
why
would not.
Kawhi fell down.
I had Kawhi as the best player in the league before the season restarted, and I had
Mhm.
Giannis as number 2. I think I had LeBron as number 3. It doesn't look good now. Um, but I mean, what was that in the conference finals from Kawhi? His defense clearly took a step back. He didn't score a point in the fourth quarter. They blew a 3-1 lead, And now it's not all on him. Paul George was terrible. The whole team sucked. But I mean, I don't know. I love Kawhi. He wanted
Yeah.
our Raptors a championship. But I mean, what was that? Like, I don't know.
So Kawhi's one series caused you to drop him three positions
I think the top four players in the NBA, top four players in the NBA are
are
so elite that
interchangeable.
one slip up, it's going to be constantly rotating.
But where's Giannis's? That's what I mean. Like, why didn't you punish Giannis? Like, he had a horrible series against the Miami Heat. They were down 3-0 before he got injured. You can't just be like, oh, he got injured. That's why they lost. No, they're
Yeah,
down 3-0, about to get swept. And then people still have him in the top three. Like, man, he was about to get swept. Yes, I know Kawhi lost a 3-1 lead, but the only thing worse than losing a 3-1 lead is getting swept. And Giannis has never beat the Buck. Giannis never beat Heat. Chris Middleton beat the Heat once he got hurt, but Giannis
hmm
never beat the Heat. So Giannis essentially got swept.
I
Like, he was so bad that series. He couldn't do anything. He was shooting threes. Like, he was just rushing his shots. He wasn't even
yeah,
guarding the best player, which we've seen at least Kawhi attempt to try to guard Jamal Murray. It didn't work out, but
did
he
not work
attempted
out.
to. Yeah, Giannis just gave up. Wasn't even guarding Jimmy Butler. He was guarding Jay Crowder. Like, we could blame it on the system over and over again, but we know how much pull and power superstars have. Like, I'm pretty sure if Giannis said, I'm going on Jimmy Butler, I don't think Coach
Yeah,
Bud's going to be like, nah, sit on the bench.
yeah,
Like, he has to be held accountable and he has to prove himself again. This is like when LeBron lost to the Boston Celtics and could have made those finals runs against Kobe and stuff like that. Like, this is Giannis's big losing point. That's why people expect him to leave because they don't think he can do it with this roster. But Giannis has to prove himself next season. He's back into like kind of like square one. Like, he has to prove that he is a superstar that could lead
I
a
agree
team.
with that. I think Kawhi is in a similar place though. For some reason, like Kawhi, it feels like Kawhi is becoming like one of the not most hated players, but like I don't know, people just don't like him right now. Like all those reports that, like I said, that were coming out last week, um, and I just think people don't like the Clippers in general, maybe, and all the load
Yeah,
management stuff. And Kawhi, just the thing is, for Kawhi, because he doesn't have like his regular seasons mean nothing because he doesn't play, right? He
yeah.
load manages the whole regular season, so it has to come down to the playoffs. And this
Mhm.
year in the playoffs, he just was. I mean, he was pretty good in some of those games. He was actually kind of amazing in the first round.
Yeah,
Um, but I mean, he's the type of player. The reason I had Kawhi so high based on last year, is because and you didn't agree with me. I was like, when it comes down to crunch time, when it comes down to you need to win a game,
yeah.
Kawhi's the guy you want with the ball in your hand, in his hands, and that's what happened.
Definitely.
And they blew through and lead. So
Yeah. Yeah, the thing with Kawhi, man, like, I still think he needs a point guard. Like, he's
yeah,
not.
I agree. I agree.
Like, him
He
and
had
Giannis, they're
yeah
not one of those LeBron or Curry. Even the guy we have at number two, KD, like, those guys need point guards to get them the ball at the right spot to operate, which is why
yeah
LeBron's our clear one. But, like, this team had no point guard. Their point guard was Lou Williams. That's the guy who got them the spots. And he aged before the
yeah
bubble. He looked like his 35-year-old self. He went from being like your pick for six man in the
yeah
top second place for six man voting
yeah
to being averaging 11 points and just being awful on the defensive end. And none of his help showed up. Like, Paul George went from being a superstar, went from being top three in MVP voting, went from being top three in defensive player of the voting. And the way he played in the finals, people are saying like he could traded for like Spencer Dinwiddie and pieces. Like, he like those players sucked around him. Obviously Kawhi
yeah
sucked too, but when you could focus on one player, like, that's not Kawhi's game where you could just like
yeah. No,
spin out of a
that's
triple team and shoot a
yeah
fadeaway. He needs a good team. He's
yeah
always had a good team because he's always been on the Spurs. Like, Giannis, like, Giannis was in bad teams where he was able to like establish himself on how to deal with doubles, how to deal with triples.
yeah.
Kawhi has never dealt with a double or triple like really in his career because those
Not
Spurs
really.
teams were always contending. He even won a championship with them. Raptors, championship. Clippers, regular season, amazing. All these, two six man of the players nominees. actual six man, another superstar, a pretty defensive player of the year. Like he was what second team in Pat Beverly, and they all sucked. And he got
Yeah.
double teamed, and he just
Yeah.
sucked.
I mean, so Kawhi, I mean, the one thing that everyone kind of knew was a weakness in his game was his passing, and I mean,
Yeah,
he averaged a career high 5 assists this year.
yeah,
Um, but I think that was more of because he was kind of
necessity.
forced to be the playmaker.
Hmm.
And the primary playmaker on a team and only averaging 5 assists is not that good.
It's not good. Yeah,
Um, so you're right. He definitely needs a point guard.
yeah. And I think Kawhi knows this. We've seen all those reports with Ty Lue. Get me a point guard.
Yeah.
Like I need a point guard.
Yeah.
Same with Giannis. Giannis wants another like player that could just go and score,
Yeah.
kind of like a Chris Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like both those guys, Kawhi and Giannis, you have 3, 4, I have 4, 5. They're kind of get improvements to their rosters that make them feel better in the playoffs. And they're kind of those two teams, like the teams that we have, top five. All those players on the top five teams are the top five like players and teams. Like they're the top five contenders for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. So okay. So obviously we have LeBron 1 and
KD
Kevin
too.
Durant 2. Who knows what KD is going to look like when he comes back? It's going to be almost a full 2 years by the time he plays again. So maybe he'll look really good. Obviously, we hope so. Uh, you couldn't like you. I think before pre-injury, you could make an argument that KD was the best player in the league. He was having one of the best playoffs kind of ever. I mean, say what you want about the
Yeah.
players he had on his team. But you can't put him over LeBron right now. But at the time when last seen, you could have made an argument for that.
Hmm.
Um, he's probably still or like KD is the most unguardable player in the league. I think more than James Harden, more
Yeah, I
than
think more than
LeBron,
James Harden too.
more
Yeah.
than Giannis, obviously. Uh, yeah,
The thing with Kevin Durant is like that's where we have to rank him. But if I was going to
yeah,
rank him, what do I expect from him? He wouldn't be in my top 10
yeah,
realistically because this injury, no one has came back from it except for one person in all sports. So yeah, people expecting Kevin Durant to be how good as he was. I don't expect it to happen. I expect him to average 25 still,
yeah. I think so.
but I think the efficiency just will be gone.
I mean, he played on like a half torn Achilles for like 10 minutes or eight
Yeah,
minutes in Game 5 of the finals last year and scored like 11 points. So like I think he'll be okay, but
yeah,
is he gonna be the
Kevin
same,
Durant.
which is like one of the best players of all time? He'll still be an all-star level player.
Hmm.
I probably. He'll make if he averages over 20, he's on the All-Star team 100%.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah. So just for LeBron, I think it was
the
I
goat.
think last year, I think it was fair for someone like me to predict that Giannis and Kawhi had passed him just because LeBron didn't play some of the year. Obviously, he was not in the playoffs.
Yeah,
Um, but I mean, come playoff time this year, no one could stop him. Like he beat Portland. People said, oh, they don't have a single defender to put on LeBron. He beat Houston. People said, oh, they're tiny. They can't stop LeBron. He beat Denver. Like, oh, they don't have a guy to defend LeBron. And then they go up against Miami, and they have Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Jake Crowder, Andre Iguodala, and he had his best series of the playoffs and won the
yeah,
championship in 6 games. So I mean, like, what
yeah.
else can you say?
Like the only reason I was like, I obviously had LeBron at one, but I understood people not having him at one because every great goes down with an injury. Karl Malone's season was stopped with an injury. Kobe Bryant had Achilles, cut his career short. He went from being an all NBA player to barely like an all-star. He was only getting in because of votes. So yeah, like people predicting that groin injury to be the downfall of LeBron James, I was like, oh man, that could be true. But he proved us wrong, and
Nope.
he was still the best player in the league. And it's kind of sizable now with Kevin Durant being injured and not going to be the same player most likely. I think the difference between LeBron and the rest of the league is not as much as I thought it was. Like even before the groin injury, I thought like Kevin Durant was coming up. I thought Kawhi
Yeah,
Leonard, Curry,
yeah,
and stuff. But it's just consistency and it's the playmaking. It's why I have Curry so high at 3. is because no matter what's happening, no matter like they could get the ball full court, get to their spot, and just score. And the reason LeBron James is higher than anyone else because he's the only player that could do that and
Mm-hmm.
then go out and guard the best player too. And people talk so much stuff about LeBron's defense, but
Overrated. Maybe last year they would have had a point, but
yeah,
it was better this year. And then into
it
games in the playoffs this year,
was good.
yeah,
It was actually really good.
yeah,
And when he has someone like Anthony Davis behind him, he could
yeah,
like be so much more aggressive on steals. And
yeah.
he knows he's LeBron James. So even a reach and foul that
Mm-hmm.
most players will get called for, they're not gonna call it on LeBron.
It happened
Yeah.
in some very huge moments in the
Hmm.
Nuggets series. Jamal Murray should have been
Fouled.
he
He
was
got
fouled by
fouled.
LeBron. They should have called
Yeah.
it. They didn't call it, but that's what happens.
Yeah.
Um, so LeBron is 30. This is going to be his age 36 season, and he just won a championship. I think I think the time has like passed for we even if Giannis, let's say Giannis or Kawhi wins the championship next year, like they're not really taking the crown from LeBron James if that happens. Like he just won a championship in his age 35 season. Like
Yeah.
if I don't know, I it's still his league no matter what happens. That's just how I feel. I don't know.
I think the only player that could take it, in my opinion, is Steph Curry. I think a Steph Curry championship
Okay,
would
that's fair
do
because it would be like I was just
crazy.
injured too, and
Yeah.
I actually was better than you this whole time, and
Yeah.
now that I'm healthy with my own team,
It's like I
that's just
want a
fair. Yeah,
championship. I want a
yeah,
championship with my own team. I
yeah,
let someone else come here to
yeah,
win championships with him. He
yeah,
left. I
yeah,
still win championships.
yeah.
Oh man, like Steph Curry has this is the
Okay,
biggest season in Steph Curry's career because if he wins the MVP and a championship, I think he passes Magic Johnson as the best point guard of all
yeah, he
time.
probably has to.
And
Yeah,
I think he honestly enters the top 10 all-time list with a performance like that, or at
I
least
think
he's really at least
I think
close.
he has to be really close because
Yeah,
yeah, and because then you're that's a pretty decent longevity too to have won in like 2015 and then winning again in 2021 as the best player on the team.
yeah,
That's I don't know. Yeah, that's pretty impressive too. Yeah,
yeah. So yeah, this it's gonna be like obviously like next season's hard to predict because there's gonna be so much moves.
yeah.
But this Golden State team has set themselves up nicely,
Mm-hmm.
and man, it's gonna be tough for anyone besides Luka Doncic to win MVP
Yeah,
just
I
because
think
of
so.
how much he's going to have to do.
I think so.
So it's going to be interesting to watch. And Luka Doncic might honestly make a case for the top echelon of this list too, because
Really.
if
He
he wins a
could
championship,
there's a world where he surpasses Giannis this
yeah,
season. There is. There is.
because man, those math teams kind of look like they could compete for a championship.
Yeah.
And if they win a championship and he gets MVP, oh, it's going to be tough.
Like now that you say it, like I don't want to I don't want to like predict too much, but like he could if Giannis, gets exposed again, if Kawhi doesn't, get
Live up.
past. Let's say Doncic beats Kawhi in the second round this time,
Yeah,
right? Like, is he better than both those guys? I don't know. Like, yeah, this could change a lot going into next year.
yeah,
Like Jimmy Butler is probably this is probably
not
the
on
only
it.
time in his whole career that he's ever going to be on a top 10 list, and I think
Yeah,
he's earned that, like we said. But yeah, this is going to change a lot.
yeah. And there's players like Pascal Siakam who could also make a comeback too, because
Mm.
obviously when the season was going on, Katie and Curry were on these lists because they were injured.
He was a top 10 player
Yeah, Jimmy
without
Butler wasn't
them
on
on the
this.
list.
Jimmy
Yeah,
Butler wasn't on this list because he wasn't playing that good during the regular
nope.
season.
Siakam was ahead of
So
Butler
with
and Tatum in pretty much everyone's eyes for a huge portion of the season.
yeah, so like how are players gonna bounce back now that the bubble's over?
Yeah,
There's probably gonna be some fan pressure that they could live off of because we've seen players perform much better with it,
yeah,
role players most likely. But we also seen players like Siakam who kind of live off the energy, perform
yeah,
horribly off it. So
yeah.
it's gonna be interesting.
Definitely going to be interesting. Um, yeah. So I think that's all I got for this list. Did we miss any honorable mentions that just kind of missed out?
Uh Jokic, Tatum. Guess we talked about Tatum a little bit. Uh,
Yeah.
Joel Embiid, you had him really high.
Yeah.
You had him above Jokic.
I was wrong. I was
Yeah,
wrong. I don't know what I was thinking.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Where
That's
does
about it.
a healthy Kyrie Irving, fall on this list? Because he's good for
Ooh,
28 a game in the regular season, 27, 28 a game.
is he good for 28 on a good team though? Because he was scoring 28, and no
True.
one else was really scoring.
Yeah.
Like with Kevin Durant and Spencer Dinwiddie getting touches, I don't think he's going to be a 28-point scorer like he was
Yeah.
for those what 5-10 games.
Yeah.
So yeah,
True.
he's
I think.
he's like a Westbrook in my opinion. He has to prove himself again.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. I think that's pretty much. Jokic, Tatum are the guys who are right on the cusp who could make it this year. Um.
Yeah,
Yeah. Other than that, I don't know. Okay. I think that does it. The draft is in, like we said, in about a little over a month from now. So next week we're going to be coming out with the draft episode,
yeah,
and pretty much draft up all the way up to the draft. Uh,
yeah. We're
uh
gonna do a top 30 prospects episode for next week.
yeah, mock draft, draft predictions, trades, all that stuff. Because I think there's going to be probably at least a couple of trades near the top of the draft,
Yeah,
this year. Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, so thank you everyone for listening, and make sure to come back next week when we get into the NBA draft in week 2 of the NBA offseason.